What's up, it's Jim from On Point Samples, and in this video I'm going to give you a quick and nice walkthrough through everything you need to know about leads. This is a series, and in the first video we're going to make a bunch of leads. I'll show you the basics, and if you never made leads before, after this you have a really good understanding of how to make these leads. In another video we'll actually go through layering, and then we'll also go over processing with like reverb and putting it under a kick and making it fit in your drop. So that's basically it. There is no lead that you can make that will really become your signature sound. It will be very tough, certainly in the beginning, because a lot of people already made a lot of leads. You just have a set of things to work with, and then the layering comes in your processing, which really makes it stand out. Don't stress about the individual leads too much. Just make sure you're really good at layering, which will be another video. Let's just start in Serum. Let's get the basics down. So first I'm going to add a lead melody from our free melody pack. You can download it with the link below, alongside thousands of other samples for free. Here is Serum, and we start with a saw wave, and it sounds like this. I'm putting it an octave up just to give that lead characteristic. You don't want leads to be too low or too high. This is too high. In a layer it might work, but the main lead should be around this range. It's the feeling you'll develop. Also, the voicing, you want to put it on mono almost all the times and put the portamento around this range, but it depends on the melody. You can also make the melody go up very fast or slow in the beginning, like the note, you know, like, and then fast at the end. And that's just this curve, or really fast in the beginning and then slow at the end. So from note to note. I also like to add a 24 up and down so I can pitch bend properly. It's nice to have this setup in the beginning. As simple and as funny as it is, this saw wave could already be a lead without doing anything to it, as long as we put it in a layer with processing. So congratulations, you opened up Serum, here's your first lead.
Wow!
You'll find different modes and different plugins, but for Serum and Vital it should be very similar to this. So basically you want to play around with the unison, detune, and the randomized phase. If I just take the detune around 50% and start adding voices, it's just basically duplicating the saw. As you can see right here, you get 2 saws, 3 saws, and then it's just slightly detuned to the other, which creates a detuned lead, which is basically the basics of hardstyle. The difference isn't really significant, but it does create slightly different leads. This one at 5 sounds completely different than this. This is one lead, and this is another type lead. And it's kind of you going like, hey, I set this on 4, I create this as my basic starting point, and then I'm adding all these other things that I'll show you in a minute. It's kind of like a blueprint. You start with the fundamentals, or like the fundaments, you know, the basics, which would be unison, detune, and randomize knob. Then you're going to add the second layer, which would probably be LFOs to pitch and everything. I'll explain this later, but second level, and the other level is distortion and cutoffs and weird filters. Just see it in 3 levels. The first level being unison, detune, and randomized phase. What happens with the randomized phase is basically this. The randomized phase and the phase position tell the waveform where to start and where to always start or randomized start, and this results in different sounds. So for example, oscillator A with a unison of 1 sounds like this. 16 sounds like this, but randomized phase down sounds like this. And this immediately gives you another lead. So if you want that kind of analog type boing, 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 or whatever in your lead, you can do this way. And you'll really hear this here. It's nice for hovers, for example, but we're not doing screeches. Yeah, this is really a really cool knob that a lot of people don't really use. I usually just put it at around 100%, and my first lead is just going to be detune like this, for example. So let's just create some leads. Here's my first lead. Saw wave. Very boring. My second lead will be detuned like this. My third lead will be detuned all the way up like this. And my fourth lead will be detuned like this. So let's see what happens if I start combining everything. First one. As you can see, 4 iterations of just a detune and an amount gives a very different layer each time you change just the detune. So this is a very important basic thing to understand with leads, and you just really gotta study this and understand the differences between this, this, and this, and this, and this. Like really play around with it and understand what does what. Now let's introduce another serum. That basically is the first layer of things. Second thing you want to do is oscillator B. We're going to use oscillator B to improve the lead. You could put an octave up, which is what I usually do. You want different octaves in your lead because you want to make it hearable. Different octaves just give it more room in the mix. It doesn't really sound that good if you don't detune it, but here you go. Just add some unison. Add the randomize knob. I don't want the clicky analog sound. And then you can change the blend between A and B. A trick that immediately works is FM A from B or vice versa. These could all be different leads. Let's change the detune. Different leads. And the same happens obviously if you take FM from A, but in a different way, because this one is lower than that one. That's how you get variations. And you can even iterate more on this FM thing if you open the sub oscillator and just disable the level and FM it from the sub, for example. Since this is a sine wave, you can also take the octave down 4. And you'll start to introduce this wobbly effect. You could do the same thing with the noise oscillator and take down the level, and you also get different variations. So for example, let's take FM from A for B. And let's take FM from noise like this. Since we're choosing white noise right now, you get white noise is basically just random noise. It's random waveforms. And a random waveform on the FM results in this kind of atmospheres type lead. This is a really cool trick, so, try that out. And now you can see that you already get so many variations just by having A and B. Now you start to introduce some FM from A. Different leads, you start to change the blend. Different leads, change the detune. Different leads, you add the sub in case you want an FM from sub, but we did FM from A. And then you have noise and you start FM noise like this. So many leads just by playing around with these blends. So you gotta really get good at just this basic setup. Now you kind of know the first layer of the pyramid. So the second thing I always do, let's just get rid of the noise right here and the FM from noise and FM from A. Take the unison and just let's start here again. The second layer, which I want to start with, is adding LFOs to the fine tune, the chorus, or the master tune, and the chaos. So there's 4 places that you can use to start to improve these leads. LFO1 could go to fine tune, and sounds like that, very annoying, like a mosquito. You can take down the fine tune, and you kind of get this moving effect already. And it starts to get fun if you open up the rate and the amount. There's another lead. And what you can do, instead of BPM, put it on hertz, so you get really fast. This is typically something you want to use with Rawstyle. So here's our first modulator that you can use. You can also add this to the chorus, but the chorus goes from -4 octaves to +4 octaves. So you get a really wobbly lead if you add it here. So you really just want to add it on 1. Or add it a lot, go to the matrix, find this one and take down the output. Another thing that you can do in the global, you can find chaos 1, open the rate to like 800 and modulate the chorus right here, right click it, mod source chaos 1. And then just take down the output right here. It's a very similar effect to having FM noise oscillator because it randomly affects the pitch. So that's how you also get that release atmospheres type lead. So now you know that you can use the LFO like this on the fine tune or the chorus, or you can use the chaos on the fine tune the chorus. You can also use LFO1 on master tune. So LFO1 goes to global master tune. And this is just the total pitch of the whole setup. So the sub, noise, oscillators, anything that generates sounds in this plugin will get affected by this LFO1 master tune. So if you want to override just one oscillator, just use this instead. So That is another trick that you can use on your leads, and you'll see how this works if I add LFO1 to fine tune and slightly on the chorus. And I'm gonna add some chaos to oscillator B, for example. I want the chaos on this one. And I add FM from A. You get variations, and now you can add detune. And you get so many different leads. And so the first one, to recap, it's so important. Detune, randomize phase, and the blend between A and B, and adding FM from A and, you know, FM from noise oscillator or the sub. That's the first setup. You always want to start with that. Then you want to add the playing around with the fine tune, the pitches, the master tune, everything related to pitch and fast LFOs like this. So that's the second level. Then what I always want to like show you guys, and what I always do, is decide if I want my leads to go up or down or not at all. For example, let's do LFO2, make it go up, put it on envelope. And now you can add this to the chorus or to the master tune. And I really like to use the master tune because I want the whole plugin to go up or down. LFO2, global, master tune like this. And 19 is an octave in serum. So 19, 38, 57, that's all octaves. So I want to go one octave up. There you go. So we can go up. Or we can go down if we do it like this. In case you go down, I want to have a fast rate. And I want to octave up, you know, because I want to have a high lead. This is really cool if you want that clicky sound, and you can obviously create it more drastically if we do 57, which is 3 octaves. You can hear that sound, right? So anyways, up or down. And if I go up, I typically don't want more than 1 or 2 octaves. So if you blend all these techniques together, you get so many different leads because there's just so many variations. What I then really like to do is start to get into distortion. Let's just open a new lead and see what happens if we add different distortion modes. So you can obviously take a saw wave with a melody, and it sounds like this. Now we add some distortion. So there's different modes. Tube is really nice and just an analog type sound. You kind of get a square sine wave type feeling because it's shaping the wave like this, wave shaper. And you get different variations if you change the unison and the detune. Pretty cool. So here's another thing that you can introduce, and modes I really like is tube, 0 square for screeches and heavy leads. And I also like sine shaper, but just add it slightly. You can get these very sharp leads. So just play around with tube, the diodes right here, 0 square or sine shaper. Final thing you can do is, for example, if we start to have a detuned one here. Slight distortion. I could add filters. And just to recap again, you know the first step, unison, detune, randomize phase, FM A and FM sub oscillator. Second one, fast LFOs to the pitches or the chaos or the master tune, as I showed right there. Third thing, 2.B, is an up or down LFO that goes to the master tune. So let's add that real quick. LFO2, global, master tune, 19 for an octave. That's FM from A. And take down the unison and FM from noise oscillator. And let's add LFO1 on a fast rate to the fine tune right there and right there. Pretty cool lead, just because we have some distortion. If you want to get really crazy. And obviously, see what happens. It's a very easy screech if we just take down the rate right here and go. There's a screech. So that's just basically the same thing. We'll do screech series as well, but you know. So now we have full lead. So what you can do is combination between filters and distortion. So that's the fifth and final thing, is filters really come into play if you have distortion. Because if I now add a filter, assign every oscillator, and for example, I take a bandpass 12, or I take a band 24, it sounds like shit, because it doesn't have drive and power. If I add my distortion, you can get these really cool Rawstyle leads. That's the fifth and final thing, is cool filters in combination with distortion. And zero square or full drive works really well. Or the band 12. And more resonance obviously gets you sharper leads. And now you can add an LFO to the cutoff to make it move around slightly. And now the cool thing is, you don't have to use this filter here. You can also use this filter here. So if we combine filter for example, a bandpass, and then we also want a weird filter, for example, formant, you can combine that here. So take the simple bandpass here and then add something like a formant, but cool ones as well is all passes or reverb filter. Add some dampening and some resonance and make sure it's not too sharp. And then add it in front of the distortion. And now you really get into screech territory and just really heavy leads, but know that you can have distortion with a filter and then another filter. You'll also find this same bandpass type beat in the distortion right here. So you can do pre, put it on pre, and then you see it opens up a filter for you, just like it would right here. It's adding a filter in front of the distortion. That's why it's called pre. And then you can change from low pass, bandpass, high pass. So anything between low pass and bandpass works for these screeches. This doesn't really work in my opinion. It's very sharp easily. So, you know, bandpass. You can add the same LFO to this small thing here, which is the cutoff range, just like you have the cutoff range here. So now you know all these things. Blending between modes, bending between A and B, noise oscillator trick, sub oscillator, adding your filter, adding fast LFOs to the pitches, adding slow LFOs to up and down. Basically, if you get really good at these 5 things, just watch the video again and just play around so much. For example, take down the detune, different lead. And you could choose to have detune here and then add detune after the distortion, because you don't want detune in the beginning, because, you know, detune plus distortion gets you a really wide, big lead. You might not want that. You might want just a nice tight lead. And then add some hyperdimension afterwards. Opposed to very different thing. That's kind of like the basics for leads, and there's more to it, and it's a feeling you'll develop if you get really good at it and just understand that you don't need much. You literally just need a saw wave or any other waveform. I didn't really talk about this, but this works, and it obviously sounds very similar if you add a lot of distortion, but you can get variations with different waveforms. You're not limited to this one. So the cool thing you can do is have a saw wave and just make sure FM from A is enabled, and you, for example, disable A. Like this. And then just choose a spectral wavetable like this. different variations, as you can see. So get really good at this, really try to understand the basics, and then try to reiterate. You can, obviously, I said you need to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't have to. You can also start with 5, then 3, then 2. Just play around with it. Don't forget to download all these, cool free samples that we have here. You can see a very big list of free samples. With the link in the description, you literally get it instantly, free vault access. Thanks for watching if you're still here. I hope you learned something. Drop a comment if you want more of this, and thanks for watching. Cheers.